Hello and warmly welcome to SAP on Azure podcast number 187. Today is April 10th, and together with Holger and Robert, we are here to talk everything and anything related to Microsoft and SAP. Hello. So you might hear about the term called Well Architecture Framework, or maybe Azure Well Architecture Framework. There are a lot of those frameworks, and this is a design framework which help you to improve the quality of the workload by working on the different pillars like reliability, security, cost optimization, operational excellence, and performance efficiency. Of course, as we talk here to the part related to the SAP, that is something which is interesting to us, and this is something what Jitendra and Hemanth worked in the past, and something which is reaching soon in GA. So I'm really happy to have them both of them to present here these kind of topics. But before we start, maybe just a short intro. I mean, JT and Hemanth, you are the old kids on the block, so maybe just give a short introduction for those guys who maybe see you for the first time. So maybe JT, if you like to start with.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you very much, Gauran, to have us back on your podcast. This is like most important for SAP and Azure community. So to introduce myself, I'm Jitendra Singh. I'm part of Azure Core Engineering, working with Hemant. We are customer-facing engineering team, and one of our goal is to bring more and more tools and framework for our customers and partners to make their life easy with migration and operations with SAP systems on Azure. Hemant?
Yep. As Jitendra said, we're part of the Azure Core Engineering. We are the customer face of Azure Engineering. We work on a lot of tools and frameworks. One of the things we've talked about in the past is the assessments, the AzSAP assessments that we had, and also the SAP Deployment Automation Framework, which is an open source automation framework that we build and maintain at Microsoft. Pleasure to be back on the podcast again.
So, I mean, this is something which already it's not new. It's in a preview, but actually it's kind of coming to the GA. But maybe, I mean, for the folks who do not know much about what's that all about and what does it mean for the SAP, I mean, can you tell a little bit more what we are talking about here and what's all about? Well, architecture framework, what does it mean for the SAP itself?
Sure. As part of, so the well-architected framework for SAP is part of a larger ecosystem of tools, which is under the ACSS tools and frameworks umbrella. We have the Azure Cloud Excellence for SAP program, right? As part of this program, what we do is we provide ways for customers, tools and frameworks for customers to de-risk their SAP engagement. As an example, let's say you go for the assessments, which is a self-service tool built on the Microsoft assessment platform, which gives you the immediate visibility of how your deployment on Azure with a set of recommendations, etc. Then you have a health check and also the a set of tools where you have like a deployment checklist, an inventory workbook to look at the inventory of your systems which are deployed on Azure. Then you have the quality checks, which are the provisioning checks to validate whether the systems are actually configured according to Azure best practices or not. Now, what these actually do is actually give the customer a way to, look at the health of the systems that are being deployed on Azure. As an example, let's say the assessments, the initial AzSAP assessments, what they do is they actually ask you a set of questions. Now, when customers are designing the landscapes or building these architectures for the cloud, what it would mean is asking the right questions at the right time and making sure that all the critical design areas are covered. Now, within the assessments itself, you have different parts, right? You have the landing zone accelerator review, which is talking about your go forward motion, where you're a new customer and then you want to you're starting with Azure or you're an experienced customer who has already deployed on Azure, there are a few questions around the critical design areas. And what these do is provide these questions, and the assessments provide the guardrails and the set of questions which you can use to engage when you want to make decisions about landing your systems on Azure. Then you have a deployment motion where you have the various deployment phases. At the end of the phase, previously what we used to have is the well-architected review would be um, done at the end of the whole deployment, or the SAP deployment on Azure has completed. What we had lacking at that time was the fact that the assessment was only one time. If you had to review periodically, you had to create new assessments and compare how you are doing. What we have now is a way to actually view how you have been progressing. If you take this assessment periodically, you can actually review how the systems that you have configured align with the well-architected framework guidance that comes from Microsoft. We have JT is going to speak about this a bit more. JT, do you want to take over?
Yeah, sure. So as Hemant was talking about assessments, right? So it's very important for our customers to understand like where they are in their journey with their SAP migration onto cloud. So they can be like new, or they can be like, they have already committed to Azure and now they are looking for some assistance with the deployment, or they're already running on Azure and they're curious to understand, okay, what next, right? Because Azure is continuously innovating new and new features that helps our SAP workloads to improve their reliability. And so like, recently we announced MV3, right? And then new features around VMSS Flex. So we want to make sure there's a option for our customers to connect with our tooling and get these guidance rather than like looking like for information from different places. So that's one of the important consideration that when we are designing these tools and frameworks for our customers. So now let's talk about the next slide, which talks about like how these tools can be used when customers using our framework. So on this screen, like if you see this, this talks about the customer journey. So once customers committed to Azure and once they have started deploying their infrastructure onto Azure, the first check will always be Azure deployment checklist. Now, this is one of the important checklists because it can happen that customers started designing the solution in the start of the year, but then it took like a couple of months for the deployment team to initiate the deployment. So what has changed between that period, like when it was on the paper design and now when they are actually trying to deploy onto our platform? So this deployment checklist connects back to the best practices. So one of the major changes that we introduced in past was PPG intent, right? Where we recommended customers not to use PPG standard, but then try to use PPG intent to give them a bit more flexibility, as well as like we introduced a lot of great features around Azure Premium Files, right? And now ANF files backup. So deployment checklist will give customer a view that what is the latest and greatest available, and then they can decide if they want to adjust the design or they can create a roadmap. So there can be areas like where they say like, no, we are good with the current design. Once we land on Azure, maybe during the next maintenance cycle, we should implement it. So that's the first area. This is also more of a program management tool that will help customer partners, program managers to make sure they understand the deployment lifecycle from the Azure perspective. Now, following this, they will be able to deploy the solution on Azure with the best practices. Now, the point number 2, 3, and 4 are more about how can we give the actual visibility into their deployment, which is technical visibility. That's where inventory checks for SAP comes, and we had a last session covering that part. And then we also have a quality checks, which is open source that also connects to the operating system and collects a lot of information. And then we have a nice way of indicating what is like, not in line with best practices. And then we provide some recommendation. Similarly, like we also have a Linux VM OS analyzer, which is more if customer want to assess using the standard tools like SOS report or support config. So these are the like some of the tools. Now, today we are just going to focus on the WAF part. Now, when customer is already running on Azure, after a couple of months, they will always be curious to understand, okay, what else I'm supposed to do to make sure like I'm at the latest and greatest innovation that is available for SAP workload on Azure. So if you can move to next slide. Yeah. Next one. So what is well-architected framework? We all know it is very important to design the architecture in the right way. Otherwise, you will encounter challenges with the performance or reliability of your SAP system. Many times it also causes confusion with our partners and customers because they always think there's something wrong with the infrastructure, right? But that's not the case every time. We have like our team is one of the team who always engages with customer during the escalation. And most of the time, we find that they are not able to adhere to the best practices, either because the program timeline was very tight and they just like deployed whatever was their best understanding at that point in time, or during the deployment they started encountering some challenges and they basically used the easy path, and those kind of configuration resulted in reliability issues later on, and then it always comes back to us. So that's why it is very important for us to build those best practices and also provide a self-service method for our customers to consume it in an easy way, right? So if you go to the next slide, there are 5 pillars for WAF, which is really cost optimization. So we definitely want our customers to understand like what efforts we are taking to ensure they are also getting a good recommendation to optimize their cost, right? Premium SSD V2 is the latest area that we are encouraging our customers to look into it. MV3 is also from a compute side, we are asking our customers to look into, so to have a better TCO. And also there are like tools available that talks about housekeeping best practices, right? And then we have operational excellence, performance, efficiencies, reliability, and security. So the aim of our assessment is basically to make sure customer has a way to connect with these from a design principle perspective. Now, assessment, as Hemanth was talking about, this is more of a design principle. What are your design principles, right? It could be that you're coming from on-premises or any other hyperscaler, and you have a set mindset saying, okay, this is the best way to deploy. But then when you connect with our WAF, you might start finding that there are options available that you can leverage on Azure and then improve your reliability of your SAP system or SAP workload on Azure. So let's talk about the next slide. So what we are really covering under cost optimization, there are like few specific points that we want customers to really think about it, whether they're using Azure hybrid benefits or not. A reserved instance or savings plan is one of the other area that customer must have, right? Because pay-as-you-go will always be costlier. And then they can also leverage some of the automation that like Goran published on our GitHub, where they can automate the stop and start of the virtual machine and SAP system when they're not using, which is like very much good use case for sandbox, or like for some of our customers, it could be like dev and QA, right? There, they don't really need to commit to reserved instance, but they can optimize based on the usage of the workload. Then operational excellence is very important when it comes to DevOps automation. We have AzDev, right? Hemanth is part of our AzDev team. He has developed a lot of like good features now. If customer starts using those kind of tools to deploy SAP workload, then eventually they will be very much in line with our WAF framework. And there will be questions around, are you using automation, right? Now, they can use third-party automation, but we will also try to encourage that they also look into AzStaff, right? Because as part of AzStaff, like they will already get all the best practices that we have, but we also support like third party. So the way we are positioning some of the questionnaires is really for customers to understand what our best practices are, plus if there are any native ways for the consumption, right? Similarly, we have performance efficiency, where we talk about monitoring, right sizing your virtual machines, right? And then when it comes to reliability, it's more about like high availability, disaster recovery, what are the best SKUs available, right? And they're like massive ton of improvement going on with our infrastructure and the latency between the zones and regions. So those are areas are covered. And securities, of course, we talk about Sentinel for SAP or any third party that customer might be using. But our aim is to really poke those questions to our customers to understand, hey, are you covering these areas? Because these are like some of the key design consideration that they need to do.
So basically, I'm just thinking, JT, because this is a framework and here are the pillars and each pillar has a different item. I mean, these stuff can be used, as you mentioned, for the already existing system in order to improve, or I mean, it's a cloud exchangeable part, but it looks to me it can be also used for during the migration as well. I mean, it's the same story. I mean, you maybe just start from the scratch, but you still need to go through those different pillars and reflect those items, right? Even when you start from
100%.
scratch. Yeah.
Some of our customers are calling it as WAF go live checks, right? Where like they have their mock production completed, and now they're just trying to say, hey, just run a quick WAF. And then there's an effort going on within Microsoft to automate some of the checks, right? They're calling it as VARI and other stuff. So definitely, so you can use it as a pre-go live or post-go live. We focus more on post-go live, a regular iteration. So it's not a one-time activity, right? So if you complete this after go live, and if it is all green, it doesn't mean like you will be green after 6 months, right? Because it could like change in 6 months and you could be totally red directly from green to red. So that's why we encourage our customers to do a regular assessment quarterly or like, more frequently or less frequently, depending on like what kind of change they have in their business processes, right? So once they complete the assessment, the next slide will talk about the key outcomes. Now, what we are trying to also ensure is like once the assessment is done, we're able to identify some of the risks, right? For example, very like simple example will be if customer is doing a zonal deployment of their database, right? And that will give them a 99.99% SLA from an infra perspective. That's a service SLA, which is virtual machine behind the load balancer and virtual machine deployed across the zones. But if you are running a database, let's say Oracle database on top of those virtual machines, and if there is no auto failover configured for the database, then there's no SLA of 99.99. So those are the important risks that we want to highlight as part of the outcome of the assessment. That it is, don't just think about hardware or virtual like service SLA, but you also need to build your application to support the SLA, and that's where auto failover or regional DR, those kind of questions will come in. Now, there will be also an area where we will try to indicate what is the high priority, right? What is low priority? And then there will be some generic recommendations that good to have kind of, right? So that's where like when customer also engages with our CSU colleagues, they will also run this value-based delivery or all those kind of great initiatives, right? And then customer will get a detailed outcome with the clear priority-based recommendations. So there's an option for a customer to simply go to our assessment platform, run a self-service check, get an output, and there's also an option for customers to connect with our CSU org and have a detailed assessment where like they can also plan follow-up sessions if they want to deep dive into some of the technologies areas. Right. So with that, the next slide.
So that was the question. Do you do it as a set of documents, or you have some, hopefully, a tool which is doing the work for you, right?
The assessments were built with two things in mind. One is ease of use, and secondly, also to be iterative in nature. Essentially, building landscapes or architecting systems for high availability, etc., shouldn't be a one-time thing because things do change. And if there is new guidance available, customers should have the ability, would like actually the ability to go back and review if the assumptions that they made and how they have architected the system still stand. And that's where the tooling comes in, right?
Yeah. So let's do some demo. So basically the way it is going to work is we have a platform, assessment platform, which is available today for all our customers. So let's talk about this slide and then we will quickly switch to demo. So what you're going to do is like you go to assessment platform, select the Azure well-architected review, and then there will be an option for your workload, right, which is SAP on Azure. Now there are other like options available for customer as well for us like SAP on Azure, and this is currently in preview, and that's where we are coming here to like give our customers and partners an update that it was going to be GA soon. So it's the right time for like explore, and if you have any feedback, please share. Once you select the SAP on Azure workload for your WAF, then you will start the assessment. So it's going to cover the key 5 pillars, which is performance, operation, cost, security, and reliability. And the outcome of this assessment is a bar chart, right? Where you can see like, we are just trying to rate. So it doesn't mean like, within every area, there's a range, right? So when we say critical, you're not like worst critical, right? I mean, you have a like really like you're on the corner. Like if you do few changes, you will be in the yellow section, right? So that's how like we need to think about, because for example, on this screen, if you think about reliability is excellent, but that doesn't mean there is nothing else you customer can do to further improve, right? Because there's a way you can further improve. So if customer is doing AV set deployment, we will definitely rate them excellent. Just giving one example, but then it's not 100% excellent, right? There's a range, so you're in 75 to 100%, because you can further improve by switching to VMSS Flex, right?
Yeah.
So that's how like we want to position. What we are also working now, and which is already available. So once you complete the initial assessment, right, you don't have to keep on repeating the same set of questionnaires every time you do the second assessment. And that's very important, because we are recommending our customers to run it every quarter. So once you create first assessment, that becomes a baseline, right? The next time you initiate your review, it is going to pick up from the history, and it will only showcase what changed. So that's a very good way for customers to see like, okay, from last time my score was, let's say, 95%. And if you do after like, a couple of months, it might come down to 70%, right? Because we have pushed a lot of best practices.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how like your score will always change.
So basically, you can have an overview and trend to see how you are improving or degrading, maybe because not implementing the best practices, right? As an example, right?
That's correct.
So,
that's correct.
yeah.
And our best practices are changing as well, right? So in past, like if you do AV set, we will say like excellent, but then now if you do like, we will say, no, you should think about zonal deployment. So how you're going to use it? So if you can just go to our assessment platform, which is available, right? We highly recommend you to log in so that we can keep some history. Now to initiate the assessment, you can simply click on Azure Well Architected Review, and then you can start the assessment. Now, when you start the assessment, you have an option. You can import some of your like subscription data. So that helps with some of the additional information from the advisor, right? But that's just an optional. Now, when you start, you see multiple options are available. So you select SAP on Azure, and then you click on the next bit. Now, in this, we give an option for customer based on like what is critical for them. If they're having some challenges, and if they're like very focused on one pillar, they can select one pillar, and you will only see questionnaires related to the reliability, right? Or they can choose all. So we recommend customers to select all, but it really like depends like what is the priority at that point in time. We also provide an option where like they can add notes. So if they have feedback, or if they have any feedback or any comment, they will be able to add it. So the flow is really simple. For every questions, there's a question and there's a slight explanation and what are the options. So customer is going to select what they have already implemented, right? And we will basically rate them based on what best practices they have already implemented. And that's how the outcome recommendations is also going to be. Now, this is a very standard flow of our assessment. What else we want to also cover is like next time when customer starts this assessment, like when they have already created the baseline, you see like, okay, I have already completed some like in past, for example, right? They can simply create new milestone. So when you're going to create new milestone, and then you can call it like, Q1 like year, right? Whatever naming convention you want to put. And when you are going to start, it's going to pull all the history, right? And that's the best part of it, because you don't have to keep on doing the same questionnaires again and again. So it remembers all your selection. And that's why we said like once you log in, it is going to keep the history, right? And that will really help you to view what is changing every quarter based on your deployment. So something like, the outcome will be like this here. You can see like when I initially did it, I had like 0 everything, right? And then when I reassessed my platform, they're like 4 in moderate and 1 in excellent. So there's a nice growth. And when I select new here, it's going to pick up my last assessment, and it is going to build on top of it. So that's how like we recommend our customers to use our assessment. That is really going to make sure they have a right connectivity with our best practices, and then they don't have to like keep on looking into multiple places, right? And then as we said, like they can always engage with our CSU team, and then they will be able to help it. So here you can see like it's going to remember all the feedbacks or like selections that we made last time. So if we have made some changes based on our feedback, what you will be able to do is like you will be able to say, okay, now I have configured my all production system for high availability. So you will just select this, rest is already selected, so you can just review. And that's how like your scoring will be adjusted at the end of it. And then you will have a good view of what is changing every quarter.
So basically, I mean, it's a higher level overview tool, but it's also help you. I'm just thinking to know where you are standing, so to say. I mean, it does not go into all deep dive detail, but it's on a high level. It helps you where you actually position and how you progress. Or maybe again, as you mentioned, degrade, because simply at one point of time you would be fully green with the best practices. If you don't do anything during the time and not following the best practices, you will go down.
Yep.
It's always good to have a kind of overview where you're actually located and what do you need to do and how you can improve, right?
That's good. That's good.
The scoring is more to identify areas where you want to focus on. It does not say that you're doing bad in that area if you got like a critical score. It just means that you need to focus a bit more, or if there is a proper explanation for that, that's fine, right? But it makes you aware that there is a scenario where you need to think about certain things. So it's more to point out. So it's actually to have those conversations with the customer, with the CSU when you come back and want to have those questions answered. And you have this readily available set of questions for you, and it gets you thinking in the right direction, de-risk your workloads, and also if there is a re-architecture of your systems required, it also points that out for you.
Yeah. And I mean, the point is, as you're in the cloud, things are moving continuously, and it is a challenging always for the customer to know where I am and what I need to focus on. What is the new? I believe here during the time you will add the additional stuff as we add also new technologies, right? As well.
That is correct. That is correct.
Yeah.
So one of the example is like we have recently started asking question about capacity reservation, right? And VMSS Flex, right? And then recently we announced MV3 public preview. So our team is like continuously going to update this questionnaires. So customer will always be able to connect, and there might be some areas where like customer might not be aware of the update because they're super busy in managing their business. So this is a good way for them to connect and say, okay, yeah, there's a new feature available, and then they can pass it to partner to work on like how to get implemented in their landscape.
Great. I mean, and you mentioned basically this is in a preview. I've seen a preview bracket actually soon will become a GA, right?
Yeah.
So that what does it means?
So when we talk about GA, is more, I mean, so there's no SLA for this because this is a pure assessment. So GA means like it is in a consumable good state, right? It is already in. We have been in preview for I will say like a couple of months, if not a year, right? Where we have been working with several of our customers and trying to seek feedback, whether like if they need more clarity on some of the questionnaire, or if some of the questionnaires were very specific and they wanted it to be a bit more generic, right? So we have adjusted our questionnaire. So from a product perspective, all right, this is just a phase, right? Where we say when we are in preview, we are very open for questionnaires, and when we go into GA, then there will be a streamlined process. Like we are going to update our questionnaire every 2 months or quarter, right? Whereas when we are in preview, we are a bit more flexible. So today I'm engaging with customer, I get a feedback, I can just update it today, right? Correct. So because we also don't want our customers to get confused saying like, hey, when are you updating these, right? Because I completed my assessment yesterday and today showing me like
Or
I'm
something.
not in a good state, right? So there has
Yeah.
to be some proper like quarterly update or those kind of. So that's where the difference between preview and GA is, right? Preview gives us a bit more flexibility. I can update anytime, any second. When it's GA, we will make sure there's an announcement, right, on our tech community to say, hey, we have updated our blog or something like that. So they have an understanding. Okay, this is the last time I ran it. It was all green. Now Microsoft has updated the assessment. Let's rerun it, right? So then they can expect some changes. That's
Super.
how like we want to differentiate.
I mean, makes sense, and I'm pretty sure it gives then value to the customer. I don't know if all of them are aware of this tool, and I mean, I'm definitely we are strongly recommended to use them. I mean, it definitely gives you, when I think, gives you direction and what Hemant you also mentioned. I mean, topics to think of. You know, how you can improve it, and because again, it's not about you do something wrong. It's about we are also changing. SAP is changing this stuff, and it's a continuous, so to say, improvement, and adding a new technology. Great. Super. Thank you, guys. I mean, happy that you could share with this. We encourage the customer to use it, to contact us with any kind of questions and any kind of feedback, of course, which is always important. Whatever they feel they wanted to do it. Hope to see you again, guys, with the new updates in some months or half a year. You know, with the new checks and new updates, how it goes. And till thank you so much. So see you then.
Thank you very
It's a
much.
point of-
Goran.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Goran.
Hemant.
Glad to be
Thank
back
you.
on the podcast.
See you.
Thanks, Jitendra.
Bye.
Yes. Bye bye.